straight white Christian.
No, Jesse, this is the subscribe thing.
Oh, yeah. I need you all to subscribe, support us on Patreon, like us on Facebook, and follow me on Twitter.
Got it.
Conservatives are under attack. Christians are under attack. Men are under attack. And it seems to be not really a strong effort to stop it. I have with me Andrew Wilkow. He is a conservative talk show host of Wilkow Majority on SiriusXM and also Wilkow on CRTV. And I wanted to talk to Andrew about these things. Andrew, good morning. Welcome to the show.
Good morning. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I totally appreciate you being here. First I want to ask, what's your impression of the Great White Hope so far? He's been there a year now and a couple months.
Look, we could sit here and get upset about small issue. We could be puritanical, or we could look at some of the major things that allegedly conservative presidents of the past failed to deliver. I mean, George W. Bush ran as a compassionate conservative, and he gave us John Roberts. We were told all through the primary contest by the Jeb Bush wing that he was not an authentic conservative, and yet he appointed the most conservative judge we could probably get our hands on. Taxes have been cut. People in the Midwest are getting jobs where we used to call the towns that they lived in the Rust Belt. Things are going well for the majority of Americans right now. Look, and again, for those of us that trade in political commentary, and I really think it's way worse when you deal with our neighbors across the street over at MSNBC. They're literally out this window. You can see me pointing literally out the window. That when people in the Midwest and people in low-income or middle-income working communities, I'm not talking about people on the dole, when their jobs are lost to high taxes, regulations, labor controls, that is a real-world consequence for these people, and it doesn't affect the media. So they talk in platitudes about, well, we need to fight for 15 or whatever it is. The economy is actually on track to do things that it was never on track to do under Barack Obama or even Jeb Bush. Let's be honest, Jeb Bush would have been a milquetoast, middle-of-the-road, sort of, by the end, I wouldn't have been able to tell between Hillary Clinton and Jeb Bush. Maybe a little pro-life over here and a little less gun control over there, but I really couldn't tell the difference between Jeb Bush and Hillary Clinton on the major issues.
Yeah. Do you agree that, I believe that President Trump would go down in history as one of the greatest, if not the greatest president we've had?
Look, if he solves this China trade deficit, right?
Yes.
If we get the border under control and he solves the trade deficit in the modern era, considering the problems he's facing, very different than the problems faced by Abraham Lincoln or Franklin Roosevelt and later Ronald Reagan, on the major issues, if he solves China, if we get a real free trade deal with China and we're not letting them eat our lunch, and we get border security under control and ISIS is totally eliminated, yes, in the modern era, this president will go down as the greatest president.
Andrew, what is a man?
Are you asking me that through the prism of what millennials think a man is? Because I think we're raising a generation that isn't quite so sure about that anymore.
Right.
I think there's a difference between being a male and being a man.
Yes. And so what is a man?
Well, I guess in the traditional sense, a man is a human being that eventually finds a woman who is his soulmate, goes before God to make a pact that he will stay with that woman for the rest of his life, being that is the best situation to raise children if you're going to do the things that bring little people into the world. And a man makes sure that he provides for that family that he has started, that he doesn't look to the government or believe if life becomes stressful or if the marriage has its stress, which all marriages do, that he abandoned the marriage. If you're asking me personally, that's how I live my life. So if you're asking me what a man is, I guess that's the description my father raised me with.
Can you become a man without getting married?
Well, it's funny. My wife and I have 3 children, and we have friends that are our age that don't have any children. And my wife will always say, I don't understand these women who could just go through life without children. And I always reply to that, it's not selfish to not have children. It's selfish to have children that you really don't want to have. So if somebody looks in the mirror and says, this is not for me, I'm not responsible enough, or I'm not dedicated enough, or I'd rather be out praying and loving, like the book. I'd rather be out, experiencing. I don't want to be home with these little people and teaching them right from wrong and teaching them a belief in God and country and all that stuff. I think it's more selfish for people. It's kind of like the idea of getting married, like, oh, we're going to have this big party and people are going to give us gifts. That's not what getting married is. That's the party. Anybody can put on a dress and throw a party.
Right.
I think that being a man is being responsible. It is being productive. It means, again, in my sense, the way I live my life is that I am the provider for my family and I am the father to my children. But if somebody says, look, I have a job, I pay my taxes, I'm not the marrying kind, I would rather that person live their life honestly than enter into a marriage they really don't want to be in and have it end in divorce, or have children they don't really want to raise and have them go without a father.
Right.
So
Governor, is it
yes.
possible? So can a male become a man without having a wife and children?
Well, what I mean by a male is this all of a sudden phenomenon where males, are fluid, right? They don't believe in the binary. They don't believe that their gender somehow restrains, or their biology restrains their gender expression. I think a lot of that is unprovable junk science. So I think when you say, in the sense of what is a man, if you're talking about marriage and family and responsibility and our place in society, yes, I live my life that way. But there's a libertarian on my shoulder who says, well, wait a second, if somebody is not, taking from the system, if they are not harming the way that you and I raise our children, they just want to live the life that they think is right for them, and it's bringing harm to no one. Yes, that person of course is a man. It's where we start getting into this non-binary, non-gender conforming, gender fluid. Let's pump hormones into an 8-year-old boy and say, hey, that's a girl all of a sudden.
Right.
I think that's a totally different discussion, and unfortunately, it's one that seems to be gaining the steam and traction of guilt, that if you believe that a man is a man, we're born a man, and we are boys who become men, and that's what we are, that you're somehow insensitive if you believe that. I don't buy it.
I have proven that racism does not exist, and that it has never existed, that it was a lie made up by the children of the lie, meaning the so-called civil rights leaders, the black preachers, not all black preachers, but most black preachers, the godless white liberals, the Democratic Party, and the media, that they made that up.
You're tougher on that than I am sometimes. You know what? Yesterday we talked about this through the prism of the anniversary of the assassination of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., and we were pointing out to many of the callers, as we're talking about gun control, that there was a time when people marched for full enfranchisement, right? When we said civil rights before what we call civil rights activism, we meant the Bill of Rights. Right. We meant people had the right to speak their mind, petition their government for redress of grievances, practice their religion, keep and bear arms, be seen as innocent until proven guilty, not have soldiers quartered in their homes. That sort of to live in a state that was free from federal intervention, the Bill of Rights. And prior to that generation, most black Americans voted Republican. Right. It was the Republicans that put Frederick Douglass and his name into nomination to be vice president, and Democrats didn't see black delegates until 1933. So when we look at the history of what we call civil rights, post-Civil War, The Republican Party was dedicated to full enfranchisement of people as citizens protected by the Bill of Rights. After the assassination of King, and look, you can clearly see I'm a white guy, I can't claim this legacy, but as you point out, white Democrats love to claim the legacy. The so-called civil rights movement got off the track of constitutional civil rights into things that have nothing to do with enfranchisement as a citizen of this republic.
So do you agree with me that, and I grew up on a plantation down in Alabama. I grew up under the Jim Crow laws. Do you agree with me that the blacks who are complaining and saying that they are suffering due to the destruction of the family and the lack of moral character? It has nothing to do with this phony idea of racism?
It's amazing. If you look at the trajectory, I'll put something to you that maybe you've never had someone say. I think there's a difference between the accusation that conservatism equals racism and people who live the
hold that thought. Hold that thought. Let me take a quick break. You were finishing up the point of not all, of course, but most black people are suffering due to the destruction of the family and the lack of moral character.
Well, what I was getting at was, if you look at when the majority of black voters voted Republican and lived by Republican values, you look, there was discrimination. There's no denying that. But there's a difference between living like a conservative at a time when people are discriminating against you and then living like a progressive pretending you're not being discriminated against. So what I was getting at with that is, when people live by the values of conservatism, right, their lives are better off. You look at unemployment, you look at out-of-wedlock births, you look at business ownership, you look at the trajectory that people who were discriminated against were on. It was a better trajectory. I'm trying to get this out I don't trip onto words. Discrimination is terrible. What I'm getting at is the lives of the people. If you take that discrimination away, they were living those conservative lives, those Republican value, those biblical value lives. When the Democrats came in and said, well, we will promise to end discrimination, but here are all the things you have to sign on to, right?
Yes.
There you have what became a destructive and corrosive force. Now, obviously, we would love to see a society with conservative and Republican principles and no discrimination, obviously. But what I'm saying is that leading up to what we called the civil rights era, the people that were marching initially were saying, treat us as equals. They had every right to say, treat us as equals. We are citizens of this republic. We fought in World War I. We fought in World War II. You treat us fair. We should be all treated equally. Understood. But now some of these charlatans who've taken on the legend, I guess it would be, now they're equating things that have nothing to do with equal treatment under the law.
Right, yeah.
Equal treatment as a citizen, and the way, as you asked me about being a man, they said, here's what we think a man should be, or what a family should look like or not look like. Let the government step in. Let the government take care of you. One of the things I like to point to, and this doesn't get a lot of talk in our circles, is what they called the Hunters Point experiment in San Francisco, where you had a predominantly black neighborhood, and the San Francisco government said, these businesses that are being owned here and these houses that are being, we want to give you better houses. Move into these government-owned. And if you've ever read about it, they raised that neighborhood, and many of those descendants are still living in public housing. They have their property taken, their businesses taken. The community was literally destroyed by progressivism, and it is not. And it has been. These people have been suffering ever since. So when you and I talk about the values that we as men live by, we inherently know, we can't force people to live by them, but we inherently know people are better off when they live this way.
That's right. As I said, I grew up under the Jim Crow laws. I had to work the farm. The boys were taken out of school twice a year to plant the crop and then bring it in. And we went to all-black school, of course, and not once did I hear the word racism. We were taught that there was good and evil in all cultures, and that we should treat people the way we would like to be treated. to work hard. And I remember my uncle and aunt, when they got married, they bought land. I had one aunt who got married. She and her husband had almost, I think, about 15 kids or so. And they owned their own land.
I think I'm tired with 3.
They owned their own land, and all of their children went to college and graduated from college, all 15. And there was not this complaint about white people. And the only thing that really needed to change was the laws that govern and protect white people, govern and protect black people. Let us move about. And then if they had left everything else alone, blacks would be better off today. But instead, they turned their lives over to the so-called leaders. They stopped thinking for themselves. They turned their lives over to the government. The government became the daddy, which was Lyndon B. Johnson, a Democrat. And it's just been downhill. And blacks are refusing to see it. Not all, but most are refusing to see it and take back their lives.
Well, you know, it's amazing, and we talk about this a lot. When you read Saul Alinsky's Rules for Radicals, which was something that Obama and Hillary Clinton both, believe deeply in. The question I always ask callers when they call my program, now they'll start with, I have no right to talk about these things because I'm white. But if I don't talk about these things, I don't care about them because I'm white. So it's a two-way street. So we talk about the murder rates in Chicago or what have you. But I'll always ask these callers, are the people where the community organizers are, who is better off, right? Is the community organizer using the community to elevate himself? Or because the promise is, follow a Barack Obama and there'll be better schools. Well, Barack Obama doesn't live in Chicago anymore. Right. The South Side of Chicago, where he organized, is still in the same exact predicament it was in before he got there and after he got there.
Even
so
worse.
What did he actually accomplish for the people there, or did he actually accomplish something for himself?
Yeah.
How does Al Sharpton live? Do the people that he organized, do they write books? Do they give speeches? Do they get TV shows on MSNBC? No. So essentially, many of these community organizers, these so-called leaders that people believe are out there trying to better their lives, are really bettering their own lives. And once they make that life better, they take off, never to be heard from again.
That's right. Absolutely. And my final question, we're running out of time here. I'm glad that you are speaking up and speaking the truth and not afraid. How can we get most white people to just tell the truth and not give in to the fear and lies of the children of the lie?
No, first of all, I guess for me, someone calling you, when you have a movement in this country that no matter what you do calls you a racist or worse, a Nazi,
right?
It loses its effect when everyone you don't like is Hitler, right? Everyone you don't like is Hitler. Everyone you don't like is the Klan. Everyone you don't like is a racist.
Right.
Well, when you do that, when you make anything that you don't like the worst thing possible, you delegitimize and desensitize what it means to be the worst thing possible. It's like when someone says Trump is like Hitler. Really? Are people being carted off to the ovens right now? What are you talking about? If you walk around saying Trump is like Hitler because he wants to secure the border, then you don't know anything about Adolf Hitler and what that means. You don't know who Joseph Stalin is. You don't know who these people are. And, at this point, I think even the people that might have at a point in their lives believed that conservatives or Republicans or talk show hosts were equated with race, when they see this constant lowering of the bar to anything the screaming activist doesn't like is that, and they start to listen to you, I think once you use history, fact, irrefutable arguments about society and how to live life, as you were talking about, and when you say, look, honest to God, I want all Americans to have an equal outcome's impossible, but being judged by the law equally, which is an equal opportunity, that's something that we of course should work for.
Right.
I think when you speak to someone who has been indoctrinated to believe something about you and you break that mold, when you get them away from the bubble that their social conditioning, and you show them something, your beliefs, in a way they've never heard it before, the first time they hear about conservatism from a conservative, it's life-changing.
Andrew, thank you so much for coming on, man. You are a good man.
You too, sir.
Thank you. I absolutely appreciate you. We'll talk again.
All right.